So good evening, everybody. This is MED110, Anatomy and Physiology 1. And it's good that you here on time because I start on time. Click here for daily announcements. This is where I put notes. I put a whole bunch of other stuff in. If you kindly dropped in, kindly mute. Thank you, thank you. Ms. Aylin, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so we start promptly at 6 p.m. even on campus, and this is a hybrid course. So the first 7 weeks are on Zoom, 6 p.m. promptly on Tuesdays. If you can't make it, kindly shoot me an email out of courtesy. You would do the same thing in the ward. I hope you would do the same thing here. So this is, let's see, what was I doing? Oh yeah. Here's where you're gonna have the announcements. I'm gonna put notes, I'm gonna put extra videos, and more importantly, I am going to put the Zoom session recording. So if you miss a class here and there, it's not the end of the world. I record all of my sessions, and also, call me for if you want to. Oh, let me move my laptop because my back will break if I stay in this position. I'm one of those proponents of, when you work, you should stand. It's better for your posture. It's better for your health. There's a whole bunch of things. And this is anatomy and physiology. Now, the majority of you already have had medical terminology. So before I can even get into the introductions, I'm just curious what you guys think you'll be learning here. So does anyone know the exact breakdown of the word anatomy, if you recall your medical terminology? Who had me for a med term? Or maybe you didn't. I don't remember. Anyone can break down the word anatomy? Anatomy. If you guys remember this. Oh, look, a little bit of yesterday's lecture. So you have anatomy. So what are we studying? What is this? So what's anatomy mean to you guys? You can unmute and just answer. What does it mean to you? Hello? Hello? Is this thing on? You can unmute and answer, or you could put something in the chat. What does it mean to you? What is anatomy? Why are you learning this? Just so you can get a piece of paper that says you're a nurse?
Study of the body.
Study of the body. Okay, good. So it's a body. What else? What's anatomy?
Study of internal organs of body.
Internal organs. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's goes body, internal organs. So we got a little bit of an idea, but anyone here took medical terminology recently? Can you break down the word anatomy? If you remember when in medical terminology they did this kind of thing? So what does ana mean? What does tomi mean? I'm sorry.
I think Tommy mean cutting.
Cutting. Okay, so
Yes.
the prefix tomi means to cut.
Yeah.
Good job. All right. Good. You're gonna prove me wrong today. Wonderful. So to cut. Now, what does ana mean? Like in the word analysis. What does ana mean? Things mean something. And I know everybody on this call probably got an A in anatomy and probably aced your final as well. But don't you guys find it interesting? You can't tell me what ana means, even though you got an A in the class. So that's my message to all of you guys. Typical nursing candidates are obsessed with their grades. Don't be. Always go for the higher standard, but don't be obsessed with your grades, because to me personally, grades mean nothing. Grades mean bunk. When you guys go to the ER and your family member's in trouble, do you stand there and ask me what medical school I went to, what grades I had? No, you ask me to do the job, and the way to do the job is you know the job, you know the terms. So ana means to cut into parts. And when you do analysis, which we'll do a little bit of it in this class, it's more rote memorization than true analysis, but we'll do a little bit of it. Lysis means to break down, ana into parts. So when you look at the first half of what we're going to be doing is we're breaking down the human body into parts. into normal parts. Again, another medical term which you guys should know. Al, pertaining to norm is the rule. So we're learning normal, the rule. Like, for example, the rule is you shouldn't have a virus or too much viruses inside you, right? That's a rule, right?
Mhm.
Also, my arm only moves one way. If it moves past a certain point and goes the other way, it breaks. And if it breaks and it is abnormal, that's the study of pathology. Study of patho disease. And that's disease, that's abnormal. But in order to learn the abnormal, you got to know the normal. And we're going to step up a little bit this term because the nursing professors, especially the pathology professors, they all gathered together to complain at me to say that you guys are failing pathology because you don't know your anatomy. You don't know your parts. If you don't know what the normal parts look like, then how are you going to know if something abnormal? Now I already gave away logi, which is study of. What's physio? What's physio or physics? What are we studying there? Anybody? What's the second part to this class? While you guys are deliberating amongst yourselves or in your mind's eye?
I think physics.
Physics. What's
Yeah.
physics? Any of you study physics?
Your body.
Yeah, body. Yeah, but physics could also mean an inanimate object. It could
Yeah.
also be a machine, which was what we are.
Mhm.
But physics, you guys remember it from maybe high school or another college class, which, by the way, if you take that class, ooh, it's an adventure, right? It's actually the way, if you remember, like, remember those cartoons back in the day that, an apple falling from the tree and it hit, Newton in the head and stuff like that. It talks about nature and how things work. That's what physics is. It's how these body parts work together. So if you know that physiology and anatomy, you know what they actually mean. Now, when you study, let me just get rid of this. This is annoying me. When you study for the exam, shouldn't you be asking yourself or study for a quiz, or what you really should be studying is to have this knowledge in your head so that you can go to your advanced classes knowing something. And not only that, many times the doctor has almost no time to explain anything to the patient. But who needs to make the time to explain to the patient and to really garner that bedside manner and that rapport is the nurse. That's why nurses are so important. And they have to know a lot of things. So they got to know the parts and how the parts work together. So you have to ask yourself, as we're going through this lecture and through every lecture, how do I know what I'm studying? Have you guys ever had an exam and then ask yourself, like, what am I studying? Like, you go just read the book and you're running blind. We've all had that before in certain classes. And then how'd you do on the exam? Awful, because there's no rhyme or reason to it. But for this class, if you're this class or my anatomy and physiology 2 class, the rhyme or reason should always be anatomy, parts, and physiology. How do the parts work together? So let's now look at, and that's what the syllabus is. And let's see if the now it's not cooperating with us. So that's what this 10 weeks is about. And if you look at the 10 weeks, every week there's a task, discussion, and a lesson. Okay. And the task is, it's going to ask you to do something, make you do something. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to ask you to do a concept map, which we'll talk more about later. And the discussion, we're going to talk about how to properly format a discussion. Now, a discussion isn't, I don't want to jump into that. And then lastly, your lesson will be some sort of case study where you answer a couple of questions. And you could see it's watch, rinse, and repeat every week. And every week we go through one aspect of anatomy and physiology or one chapter of our textbook, which is located all the way here at the top. And I deleted all this extra garbage. I should have deleted it before. But here's our course textbook. It's OpenStax and it's free and it's online, and here it is. And we're gonna see a little bit of that later on. But you gotta look at this next 10 weeks as every week 10%. So if you come to class and learn stuff and do your task, discussion, and lesson, and you do it by next week, then you get credit. You do it every week, and then it all adds up. But I'm going to give you a little bit break on week 4, because on week 5, you're going to have a midterm. Your midterm will be online, week 5, and it'll be 50 items, multiple choice, because that's your T's, that's your NCLEX, that's your MCAT, that's your GMAT. All your future exams that you're going to be taking are a multiple choice. So you gotta get used to the multiple choice format. And in week 4, I'm going to go over a little bit on test taking strategy on how to defeat multiple choice exams. Anybody here on this call ever had SAT or PSAT practice, that kind of thing? Or maybe you were looking at doing some practice for the T's? I highly recommend it, because these exams aren't normal. There's a specific way they ask questions, and there's a specific way to answer them. And we'll go over that on week 4 regarding how to defeat a multiple choice question, which you will be coming up against time after time after time. And then, of course, week 10, there's nothing to do on week 10 but to take a final exam. And your midterm is cumulative from all the items from week 1 through 4. And your final exam is cumulative of all the items from week 5 through 9. Now, if I'm going a little bit too fast, it's okay. This is all recorded. You could slow it down, because medical personnel are infamous to talking a mile a minute, and I am no exception. But you could also raise your hand and just tell me, hey, can you slow down? Can you repeat that? And also, at the end of all of my sessions, I stop the recording and I have an open session where you can ask me whatever you want regarding the topic. And if you want to go over some things, I'll gladly hang out. My lectures I try not to go over 90 minutes, because you guys have what? Homework. You guys have things to do. And I highly suggest, because most people, right after they go over the lecture, you take a little snack and then you do something else, and then you hope to try to get this done maybe over the weekend. I highly suggest you do not do that, because the lecture will be fresh in your mind. The little hints that I'm giving you regarding the task, discussion, and lessons will be fresh in your mind. It's best to tackle this stuff tonight. And it's good because let's say you messed it up a little bit. Maybe your discussion isn't quite up to par. And we're going to be talking about in a moment what's good for a discussion. Then you have the whole week to correct it. Let's say you submitted it tonight or tomorrow morning, then you still have the whole, then I answer back like tomorrow, and then I go, hey, fix this, fix that, and it'll improve your grade. So there's a potential for you to get hundreds on everything. Let's say you messed up on your lesson, you didn't answer all the questions. If you answered them early, then I get back to you like, hey, can you expand on question number 5? Can you expand on question number 3? You fix that, then your 80 turns into 100. Your 90 turns into 100. And I've got to be a little bit strict on when this stuff is due, because last term, you guys were killing me. Everyone was handing stuff in late, and it didn't matter anyway, because remember, B- or better is the standard. And if you're already getting a C or a D by midterm, that's already 5 weeks done. So start off on the right foot. Work on all your work for not only my class, but for every class every day. For those of you who already work in the business, you know this is an everyday job. There's no such thing as taking time off. I always have questions like, when is there break or time off? There's no break in the real world. So why should there be a break here? And also, many of you are trying to get into your nursing program as quick as possible, and that as well. And the quickest way to do it, ace all of your classes, hand in all your submission items on time. Okay. So if, there's an official policy, like for every day it's late, I minus 10%. So if it's late 4 or 5 days, you're already down to 50%. And I have to be strict on that. I wasn't strict on that in the past. And it's padding grades, but not by much. And the classes that hand in things on time, those are the ones that that the students do better. Those are the ones that the students stay in nursing. To be honest, it is relatively easy to get into our program, but it is also very easy to get out. And like I told you, pathology is one of those high value future classes that are not easy, and you need this structure of anatomy and physiology. So let's look at, of course, this week's task is easy. You could do it tonight. You you download and sign the lab safety contract. I believe it's here. You could take a picture of it and you could put it in and get that done. Lickety split. And let's see if it's here. So it looks like this. You know, just write in your name here and sign, and then date it, because we will eventually be having laboratory, and we need to, what do you call that? We need to make sure that everyone understands lab safety and all that. It's part of our liability insurance. Okay, so does everyone understand how this week's task will work? You click on this, you sign it, you scan it, or take a picture of it with your phone, and then you could submit it in. And please, you could do that tonight. This is parts of the microscope. We'll be going over that in a moment. Now let's look at what is a discussion. So we have a discussion here. How to use an electron microscope to allow for better visualization and pathogens. Now, right off the bat, because I always get this. Students say, how am I gonna do 200 to 250 words on such a simple thing? Well, this skill set of discussions is, what am I clicking on? Where's my Microsoft Word? There it is. So let's look at this discussion. Let me copy this so I remember what we're talking about. So I'm here. I'm going to pretend to be a student. Now, typically the students just do what? Just answer the question, maybe Google the first thing they see, and then copy and paste it on there. Please don't do that. That's plagiarism. And we're going to talk about how you do citations in a moment. And there'll be training next week with Ms. Laura De Leon. Or I can make the training available. I don't think I scheduled for this particular class. But Ms. De Leon is our university librarian, and she's a wonderful resource. And we also have resources for APA formatting that's in our Moodle shell. But let's start off. And this is the ideal. Let me make this bigger. Let's see it. You know, when you meet somebody or when you start talking to somebody, you don't just start talking. You got to introduce yourself. You got to have a way to warm up the conversation, and then the conversation gets going. And then, of course, what do? You summarize it, right? So the introduction. Define your terms. What is an electron microscope? What is the definition of better visualization? And it goes, and do I use electron microscopes for pathogens? What's a pathogen? All of these things. And then also put your opinion. Is the electron microscope any good? How about the other microscopes? Is it any better? Now, in the body, that's the important thing, and that's where you're going to use your APA format of citation, right? What they call in-text citation. So your opinion is good. You found some terms, and I hope you, in your summary here or later, we're going to talk about, your citation, works cited, or your citations. That's at the end. Where did you get this information? This has been fake news and stupid news has been around since the time there were human beings. And it's laughable. Everything that comes out of the mouth of TV, Dr. Fauci and friends, it's so stupid that I don't want to get into it here. But if you've had me in other classes, I could provide you evidence. Stark evidence that what you're hearing, because what you're seeing, there's absolutely no basis for all the craziness that's going on. Okay? And actually, there's actually evidence and basis of people padding diagnoses to increase their funding, right? Because it's all about getting paid. Okay, if you ever take my HCA 407 class, I hope I get to teach it again. They've had me teaching the 100 level classes, but in HCA 407, which is the healthcare finance course, I talk about how hospitals are run exactly like businesses. And if anyone here is doing business, make business decisions based on evidence, not how you feel. Take emotion out of the equation. What is your evidence for saying the electron microscope is better? What is your evidence to say that it's good for pathogens or for things that create disease, right? Where did you get this information? Did you get it from a .com that your neighbor made or some blogger? Maybe you got it from Jake Paul. Yeah, he's a good source. Again, sarcastically, no, he is not a good source. What's a good source? You get it from a .org, like a hospital or a healthcare organization, like the National Institute of Health, that kind of thing. You could get it from a .gov, like the Department of Health, a government agency. You can get it from a .edu, which good .edu is a medical school or a nursing school. So these are the things you get it from. You don't get it from Wikipedia and hearsay and Medscape. And if you look at the .coms, look in the corner. There's ads. They're trying to sell something to you. That's already a bad sign. And you know, you look at CNN, C-SPAN. There's wonderful articles in NPR, which is probably one of the more a little bit to the right, but it's one of the more non-biased news outlets. But all news outlets are biased to some extent. But they came out 10 years ago with a wonderful article rating all the channels. Have you ever watched two entirely different news channels and they both saying the same thing, but one will say, oh, the president's the worst president in the world, and the same exact story will be, did you see how the president was so brave during these harsh times? You could see how evidence can get what? Misconstrued, pushed around. And that's what is the function of this discussion, so that you can learn how to do things in an organized academic manner. Have an introduction, have a body with evidence, and then summarize, because maybe your opinion got changed by the evidence. How many times have I read an article that showed me evidence that maybe we shouldn't be thinking of this way. I should be thinking the other way. And that's also what we're also going to be talking about when you start replying to each other. But for this first week, let's just do our initial post. The post should be anywhere from 200 to 250 words. Please don't make it like 1,000 words. Some of you really try to write a textbook. It's not quantity, it's quality. Okay? Get straight to the point. Some of you stretch this introduction part and make it look like a book report on the electron microscope. This is college. I don't want that. I just want your basic definition of terms. What's your opinion? Is the electron microscope good or not? Yes or no? Then give me your evidence according to the Department of Health, according to the National Institute of Health, according to University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey, right? .edu. They said this, and it backs up with my opinion. Or if they said something contrary to your opinion, then in your summary, you could write, oh, you know what? That particular source changed my mind. I now believe that the opposite is true. Electron microscope is the best thing since sliced bread, and we should have one in every home. Darn the cost. Make sure your grammar is on point. Okay? Good grammar. Full sentences. No bullet points. I love how, even though I do bullet points here, but when you answer, because we're trying to not only develop your English composition skill sets, we're also trying, we're also trying for you to improve your communication skill sets, which, by the way, is one of the major complaints. We have this thing called advisory boards where we talk to the people who hire our students, and they're brutal. It's a very brutal meeting, and they bluntly told me your nurse candidates can't write. And I said, how so? And then they told me there's no organization of thought. They barely know what evidence-based medicine is, and their formatting of their citations are not on point. So these are the things you'll see discussions in almost every class in this particular university and other universities, because we want to try to train you to do this, to have an organized way of thinking and an organized way of collecting data. Does anyone have any question on how your discussion for this week and for the rest of the weeks should go? And if you want to also talk in private about your writing or have some extra tutoring regarding your writing skill sets, I'm also available for that as well. Shoot me an email. Again, my contact information is in the Moodle. So are we good? Can we move on? We're good? Okay. No questions?
No.
Comments or recipes? Let us move on with the show. And again, if I'm going too fast, go look at the recording again, or hang out at the end of the lecture, and then I can go over that part again. Now, what does the lesson look like? Go through all this because we're going to go over all this together. But you go through all the way here in the application assignment. Right here, which is the study of the fatal flu. You click on this. Now, the first thing I need for you to do is click on this worksheet. And you know what? Let me make a note. I'm going to put the worksheet in a Microsoft Word format so it'll be easy for you. It'll be easier because this worksheet, and it's here. And then you read the case and then you answer these questions. And there are charts to fill out. And if you stay after the lecture proper, I could show you guys how to do this, or try it on your own. Give me a call, but almost always people get confused. Like, what am I supposed to put in here? Well, you go through this. See this little button? You read all this, and then from what you read, that's where you get the answers to the worksheet. So you read about the fatal flu, and it's wonderful. And it's definitely not racist, because Guangdong province, they're infamous. If you look at if you look at the what do you call that? The Chinese Scientific Department of Virology, they developed the last 4 sets of deadly viruses. So that's why Congress is now looking into, did they leak something by accident, or heaven forbid, on purpose? And if you were in my finance class, I could tell you exactly how and why someone would let go of virus on purpose. It's not beyond human beings to do horrible things. If you guys recall, in World War I, we used a lot of chemicals to do chemical warfare, which, by the way, half the world still uses those horrible, horrible things. So you look through here, and you read through it and answer the questions, and then you just click on the next thing, on the next thing. And this is, this part is the part where you fill in some of the blanks in those charts. Now let's look at this real quick, since I got all of you here, so you can look at how laboratories get done. And this is an ELISA, or what they call immune immunofluorescent assay, meaning there's antibodies that stick to like the virus, and then it has stuff to make it glow in the dark upon X-ray or upon fluorescent light. So this, you always will have a positive control. So some virus, some known sample where there's an actual virus, okay? Then you have a sample of what a healthy person looks like. So you have a positive control and you also have your negative controls. And then they want you to look at this. So let's look at all this. Okay. So let's look at this. This patient one, is patient one infected? Can anyone tell me if patient one is infected? And can tell me why? Is patient one infected with anything?
No.
Nope. Do we see anything glowing in the dark? Nah,
No.
the speckles, but no, not like that. Right? So patient one is what?
It's
It's negative, right?
Healthy person. Yeah.
This healthy person, it's fine. Oh, how about patient two?
Sick.
Don't know. What's going on here?
It's
And I
a
look
red
at
fat, you can see.
RSV, which by the way, nasty.
Nasty.
RSV is very nasty, especially for pediatric patients. Oh, by the way, and this is the, I'm going to be nice. This is the funny part about all this viral testing. RSV, if I tested all of us, right? How many of us? 6 or 7 of us? More than half of us would be positive for RSV. But is anyone dying here? No, because RSV goes, and viruses, right? Because if it's this bad, that means my patient is immune compromised and the virus got in and now it's replicating. So just because someone is positive doesn't necessarily mean they're sick. Positive on a test doesn't necessarily mean you're sick. So that's just something to think about. How about the next patient, patient 3? They got a problem?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. What do they got?
Influenza.
Influenza. Hey, gang, remember when we were talking about how devastating coronavirus was in its first year? How it killed 400,000 people. Oh, the madness. Hey, did you guys know the year before that, influenza A had a good year? It killed 265,000 Americans. And just in America. So why are we all hyped for 400,000 people? And that for 400,000 people who probably were misdiagnosed? And what do I mean by misdiagnosed? Did you guys hear the reports that people are coming in like for a heart attack or whatever, right? And then they get, of course, they might get corona positive, right? If you're in the hospital long enough, you could get positive. Guess what they're putting as number 1 diagnosis for that heart attack patient? Coronavirus. Now, why would you do that? Again, more stuff to think about. Evidence versus what? Evidence versus reality. So this is reality. How about my patient 4? Are they sick?
No.
No. Right?
Yeah.
So you can now see how the medical business works. It works via evidence-based medicine. But the problem is, and even the grand Dr. Fauci said it early in this pandemic, it will be, quote, and this is a quote, it will be difficult to separate the politics from the medicine because of what's going on, because of fear, because of all of this, right? And it is our medical duty to do what? To be the calm person in the room. Do you see on CNN, even just last night, I was in the gym, there was this ICU nurse with purple hair from Tennessee talking about how things are going to get worse and how we're all going to die. And she's showing data from Tennessee and then extrapolating that to the United States of America. Do you guys know how big the United States of America is? And do you know how small Tennessee is compared to the United States? Something to think about. And again, I want you guys to not only question any textbook, question me, question the world around you, and always gather your own data, your own evidence. So from here, you can fill out the chart. Patient 1's negative, patient 2 would be positive here, right? Let's go back and look at that worksheet. See here, we can do this. And then of course, right? What can you tell, what can you tell about what could be causing the disease, right? We saw only two viruses, RSV and influenza. And oh, by the way, influenza is also a coronaviridae strain. Coronaviridae has what, 240 different viruses, which by the way, the coronaviridae strain is the cause of the common cold. We've been working on that since the 30s, and we still haven't had an answer. So do you think we're gonna figure that little tidbit anytime soon? Probably not. So you go through all this, and you could also do the same thing for this as well. Look, we did a culture line. So, and a culture is when we grow something, we get your sputum or we get your blood, and then we grow it in the lab. And sometimes this stuff might grow out of hand. And then you could see here from this, like which cell culture was positive. Oh, this one, this patient, two things grew. This patient, two things grew. This patient. And from there, you can answer the questions. Now, if you get some trouble, in what kind of questions, you can use Google. You can try to Google your way out of it. But again, always look for what? Look for the something that will formulate and give you the proper data. Now, since we're talking about viruses, I'm skipping around here before we get into the main thing, which is microscopy and the microscope lab. And then you're gonna be wondering, why are we doing microscopes? And I'll show you in a minute. Watch this video regarding chain of infection later. And then you'll understand why everyone has to wear PPE, why do we have hand washing and all this other things, because this will be a recurring theme all throughout your education and beyond. So with that little public service announcement, let us now jump right into the lecture proper. And let's talk about what we saw in task 1. Let's talk about the microscope. Now, before I talk about the microscope, we have to have an overview of why in heaven's name are we doing microscopy and stuff that I can't see with my eyeballs. Well, cells, what's it called? Tissues, organ system. Let us look at, where is my, oh, this is my, and I don't know why they blotted out his stuff, but come on, we're all adults. We know what's under there, or do we? So why do we need to look at a microscope? Because when you think of, I used to think that pathology, when I was first starting out, I used to think pathology meant pathway, because there's a path to disease, but patho means disease, it means abnormality. So when you think about it, you're made out of a whole bunch of atoms. When glued together, you have a whole bunch of molecules. You glue a whole bunch of molecules together, you have macromolecules. A whole bunch of macromolecules glued together, you got an organelle. Organelles make up cells. A whole bunch of cells glued together make tissues. Tissues make organs, and then organs get lumped together in an organ system, and then you have naked man here, which is your entire organism. So if something happens on the lower level, the lower organization level, do you think that problem will get amplified all the way to here? A classic example is Down syndrome, okay? It is a genetic abnormality at the molecular level. But then what happens? That abnormality went to here, went to here, went to here. And then what do you have? You have a genetic disease. You have something that's abnormal. It's not a horrible thing to say that something is abnormal. Ab means away from, norm means the rule. But you could see also how people use that word, you know, to make people, to push people down, or to, you know, to make them feel smaller. But we in medicine, we use terms, you know, because we use it at the medical term level, but because of politics and whatnot. But be careful what you say around laypersons. because when you talk about abnormalities, they start thinking, oh, you called me a bad word or something. I don't know. But that's what I found in my 30 plus years doing healthcare, is that we have to be careful with our communication, because we have training and the majority of our patients do not. So you can now see and help explain to your patient how something small can end up something big. And we're going to be talking about this bad boy here, the mitochondria, in a couple of weeks. That's the powerhouse of the cell. That thing goes down, it's going to make a whole bunch of abnormal cells and then give you yet another genetic disease. Now, this organization level also responds to the outside world. So if you do not take care of your body, right, and you put in the wrong macromolecules like food, put in the wrong food, or you don't properly use your body in a proper manner, or you like putting other chemicals in your body, then what's going to happen? Remember that pathophysiology. It's going to continue, and then it's going to affect the organism. So when you really think about it, and that's why the place that I'm from, the Department of Internal Medicine, I was an internist by trade before I went into education. We believe in prevention, because by the time you get heart disease, there's not much I could do for you. And it's hard, and I'm in my 50s now. It's so hard to turn back the clock. It's so hard to get back to the gym and to train like I did when I was in my 40s or when I was in my 30s. I look at pictures of myself and get very sad. But what should I have been doing all this time? I should have been taking care of myself a little bit better. And you guys know all about doctors. We're the worst patients. We do the worst things to ourselves, right? So this is one way you could understand why we're going through the next several chapters, and we're going to be talking about the cells and organelles and molecules. And next week, we're going to be talking a little bit about chemistry, because chemistry controls atoms, molecules, and macromolecules. And remember what I stated, that this glues to this glues into that. We're going to be talking about bonds. How did you guys ever wonder why when you jump in a swimming pool, you don't fall apart? I've been wondering that since I was 4. But it's real. What's really neat about medicine is you get actual answers to actual real questions, not BS answers, actual reality. And that's physiology. That's the beauty of it. Now, there's a parts of a microscope here. There's, I believe it's an online something or other. I'm not quite sure if it's working or not. But there is also, maybe it's in lesson. Here, there's a virtual microscope that you can mess around with and turn the knobs on. And there's a quick time and flash video that you can go over. And right here, there's like, I think there's like a little quiz you can do. Let's see if it's, because I'm on Safari, it might not work. Should be on Chrome or Firefox. Where is the, yeah, that's probably right. It says not secure. Let me just go over parts of the microscope. And this is light microscope, light microscopy. So when you're looking at this, the parts of the microscope, you have your eyepiece. Since there's 2 of them, bi is the medical term for 2. Those are your binoculars. They have a little of adjustment here, to make things a little bit clearer. This is called the head. This is called the arm. This is called the base. When you carry a microscope, do not carry it by the head. It will come off. There's only one pin holding this whole thing. And by the way, these optics are not cheap. You hold it, one hand will hold the arm, and your other hand will palm the underside of this base. This is called the carousel, where you have objective lenses. You have 4x, 10x, 40x, and 100x. And it means 100 times, 40 times, and so on and so forth. You should only move these objective lenses in a, excuse me, in a clockwise motion. Because if you keep on moving it in the counterclockwise, we'll show you in lab, this whole thing comes off. And by the way, these things are also expensive, these objective lenses. The 100x utilizes oil immersion for even a better view. You put the specimen on a piece of glass on this thing called the stage. The opening is called the aperture, and the stage has a stage clip. You have coarse adjustment, which is the big knob, fine adjustment, which is this little knob, and the stage controls, which move the stage from left to right, up and down. You have your light source here, also known as your illuminator. The light source either could be electrical, or it could be like a little mirror that reflects off of the ambient light in the room, or the light from a separate source. You have your diaphragm and condenser. The function of both these things, the diaphragm and condenser, the diaphragm is to close off light, and the condenser is to make the light smaller so it can pinpoint the light into your specimen. So you know that this is anatomy class and these are the parts. Do you think I can easily take this picture or any other picture, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you'd have to know what it is? Do you think I could also do that for a lab class? Yeah, I could. So if you do that, right? Don't you think you couldn't, if you do that and practice that at home a couple of times, you will be prepared? Have any of you ever taken an exam that you studied all night for, but you still did poorly? I could tell you why. Because you did not study the way, you did not train the way you are to fight. That's why another thing that some of you might know about me, my family and I are soldiers, family of soldiers, and all of us, of course, are into the martial arts. The word martial actually means pertaining to military. So martial arts and organized way of fighting. I've been doing it more than half my life. Actually, been training my older children. You should train like the way you fight. And with no disrespect to any of the soft martial arts, like, Wing Chun or Kung Fu, you see them flop around and dance around. And we all are adults. We all seen what a real fight looks like. That's not a real fight. So that poor person who's been training like that is going to get to an exam or a real situation, and they will do poorly. If you know your exam is an anatomy and physiology, multiple choice examination, and I'm giving you a hint. I already showed you a diagram with arrows. Hint. Take apart that diagram, put your own A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and make your own quiz and try it at home. Then you will be training the way you fight. And that's actually how you prepare for your T's. That's how you prepare for your MCATs. That's how you prepare for your GMATs and all of these standardized examinations. You prepare by practicing. Because if you just read it and then try to memorize and try to close your eyes, that's the same thing as, oh, let me pretend to fight without fighting. It will not bode well for in the real world. And it's also the same thing when you guys start moving to your clinicals, when you get into nursing, there's a lot of serious simulations in that Health Lab 3, which are going to look, act, smell, and feel like the real world. Those dummies or those mannequins that are in Health Lab 3 in the nursing laboratory, I believe at least one of them can talk and can actually give you real life scenarios and with real life diagnoses. And that's why the nursing, School of Nursing, wants to train you the way you are to do in the real world. So in the real world, we'll be messing around with microscopes, right? You never know, you might work for a mom and pop place. Now, you don't need to do this microscope lab, but you definitely need to do the application assignment, and that's what you're turning in. So try it out tonight, and then, if it's giving you trouble, give me a call, and then we can help you out. Okay, how to use the microscope, compound microscope. I'm not sure if this thing works. It might, but I'm on Safari, like I said. You can also, Google it, find a nice video from a legit source, like a nursing school or a medical school. All right. Anyone have any questions about how to study? Hint, hint, how to look up parts of the microscope? Let's get into some microscopy that's right here in this video. All right, it's at this point of the show where I'm going to play the video, okay? And everyone, we're all going to watch it together, and then I'm going to pause it, and then I'm going to ask you guys some questions. And this is an exercise I like to call active listening. My voice, no matter how much I love it, this is boring. Lecturing is boring. Videos are boring. I wish there wasn't any COVID, because we would be in the lab right now looking at slides and identifying slides and doing actual things. But because of COVID, we got to make do. So one of the skill sets that are really important, because I'm sure, and especially in if I turned your cameras on, some of you are doing laundry. Some of you, I don't know, playing trying to take care of your kids. Everyone's trying to multitask. I know, and I don't fault you for it. We're all human beings, but you got to get this information in your head. So one of the skill sets is called active listening, and active listening that's why I went in with the introduction, knowing what's important. So if you know what's important, the parts and how the parts work together, right? Then when you watch the video, you have to always ask yourself what's important and what's a testable item. Not only testable item, what's important for me. So when I look at a microscope in the real world, I'm not stupid and I know what I'm looking at. And so let's play this video and then take notes on a scrap piece of paper. And then I'm gonna be going around the room, well, the virtual room, and then asking each one of you, what do you think is important? And what do you think is a good testable item regarding microscopy and this class? Okay, so let's start this video.
Hello and welcome to Anatomy and Physiology at Glen Oaks Community College. I'm Dr. Ren Hartung. For this video, we're going to look at histology for at least the majority of the tissues of the human body. What I want you to key in on when you're looking at histology, in terms of making it as simple as possible, what you're looking for when you're presented with a histological image like this one is that you want to look for the major features that you can make out and use that information to determine what type of tissue it is. So when you're doing histology, start learning those major features of the tissue. Where this is important is if you see this tissue prepared a different way with different staining techniques, etc., then you should still be able to recognize the particular tissue that it is. And if you get a slice that's from a different part of the body that might look a little bit different, as long as you're looking for those major features, you should still be able to figure out what the tissue is. This slide is adipose tissue. And I can tell it's adipose tissue because the major feature of adipose tissue are these large, kind of roundish white areas. These are the actual adipocytes or fat cells that we see in adipose tissue. There's some other structures here. This looks like a big blood vessel to me, but don't let that throw you off. And there's these darker staining connective tissues. But the majority of what we see here are these big white open cells, the adipocytes. So this is adipose tissue. Let's move on to the next slide. This is also adipose tissue. Again, we have these big whitish open areas. These are the cells, the adipocytes. And this slide is showing us something else about adipose tissue, and that is that the adipocytes, the fat cells, have nuclei, of course, but the nuclei are found on the periphery of the cells. They're on the edges. So that's another major feature, these large, open, white cells with their nuclei on the periphery of the cell. These are adipocytes, and the tissue, of course, is adipose tissue. Next slide, basically the exact same picture. And what I did was I just darkened the color a little bit more so you could see it easier. But again, major features for adipose tissue, large whitish cells filled with adipocytes. and the nuclei for the adipocytes are on the periphery, on the sides of the cells. This is blood.
Okay, let's stop. Okay, so could I show you this picture on an exam? Right? And of course, not labeled. Here you go. If I put this and point it at this, you should be able to identify what this is. And we gave an example. It's an adipocyte. So what's another word for adipose? Anybody? Adipose. Yeah, my wife's trying to steal your thunder. Hey, you're already working in the field. Go away.
Is adipose fat?
Yes, it's fat. So what does so if you look at it, fat. I hope you answered that on your own and you didn't get any hints from my wife. My wife, by the way, former nursing student and healthcare administrator at Inova. I'm trying to have her come in to be a guest speaker to show you guys that medical term, really important class. She presented to one of our advisory boards to talk about how, and it's a true statistic, you can look it up, the majority of medical communication errors are because of poor medical terminology, the wrong medical terminology, the wrong description of diagnosis. So fat is called an adipocyte. So what was so special about the adipocyte? What was the major feature? How can you tell this on any other? See, I can show you this picture. I can show you this picture. It's all the same, isn't it? What's the major feature? It's this big space. All these big spaces and the nuclei, which has all the genetic material. Look at that. It's all on the sides. Now, think about what adipose and fat is. Doesn't this look like a nice cushion? Like styrofoam? So it's a nice cushion. It can also provide insulation. Also, the main part of an adipocyte or a fat cell is storage of glucose. So if something has to store something, don't you think it's going to be a big wide open box? Now you could see that physiology, the function, has to match its anatomy. So if it looks like a certain thing, right, it's going to act a certain way. And that's where form meets function. And that's why this class is called anatomy and physiology. And I could be on an exam and point to this and ask you, what's the function of this cell? I could ask you, what is the name of this cell? I could ask you, what is what is its most popular or most identifiable feature? And all of that, do you see how we extracted all of that from that one little 1 minute video? And this video is like 42 minutes, which, by the way, I will have better pictures than the video. I'll be posting that on the announcements later this evening. And also, having my notes. I watched the video and I put my notes on what's important. So when we're going through this video, right? Ask yourself what's important. So now we know what's the importance of a fat cell. It's a good insulator. It's good cushion, right? I have lots of this. And when anything bumps into my stomach, it does not hurt me because my stomach has a lot of cushioning. And I will never get cold in my stomach because I have a lot of insulation. And I really could do with missing a couple of meals because there's a lot of glucose in here. Okay? And that's what fat is for. But too much of a good thing becomes a bad thing. Let's move on to the next one. So when you guys were taking notes, did any of the same things pop up, or did you have something different? Anyone had anything different? How's this one? What is the study of tissues? He mentioned it in the beginning, and it's also the title of this video. Histology. So if you have a tissue sample and you sent it to pathology, what department specifically in the department of pathology you'll be talking to? You'll be talking to histo, because that's where it is. And that is also one of my pet peeves. How many times I get to the medical staff, whether it be nurse or doctor, I go, where's my tissue sample? I don't know. I called cytology. Why are you calling cytology? He goes, I said tissue. Tissue is histo. You're wasting my time. My patient's sicker now. Thank you. You see how annoying the world can be? If you don't know your medical terms, you don't know stuff. Now, let's go to the next thing. But you guys will. And my job is to arm you with knowledge. So, because when I was first starting in the medical game, I hated not knowing stuff. I hated being the person in the ward who knew the least. So I made it a mission to learn more. And there's a reason why I started off in medical assisting, became a medical biller, became an office manager. I did 2 tours of EMS as a EMT Delta in the South Bronx, New York City. You see how it goes? You start out small, you go keep on leveling up, leveling up. Next thing I know, got an MD and a couple of other choice letters at the end of my name. And it's why, because I don't really give a darn about grades. I care about, do I know something that will actually service and help my student or help my patient? So let's look at this picture. Enough of me yapping. Let's look at this.
In terms of major features for blood tissue, most of the cells that you see are these little red cells. These are actually red blood cells. And you can see that they have this kind of lighter area in the middle. It's because they have that kind of interesting shape of a red blood cell, almost like a donut without a hole in the middle, kind of flattened in the middle. But the major feature is that you see these erythrocytes or red blood cells. The other features that you can see in blood tissue when you look at it, you get these large cells that are kind of bluish or purple, and those are white blood cells. When they stain kind of bluish or purplish. And if you can see this little tiny dot here at the tip of my pointer, you might not be able to see it. There are these little tiny either reddish or purple staining structures. They're called platelets. They're important for stopping bleeding, for hemostasis or blood clotting. There's another one at the tip of my pointer there. If you can't see them.
Okay. This is a blood smear, a peripheral blood smear. Again, if we were in lab and we didn't have COVID, I used to prick your fingers, or I'd show you guys how to do that, and then put a smear of your blood, and we could look, and you can now see what is the majority of your blood made out of. Red blood cells. How do I know what a red blood cell look like? It doesn't have a nucleus. It looks like a donut. It's actually called a biconcave disc. And what does a donut do? Maybe you guys went swimming lately, right? And sat one of your family members, or you sat yourself in a lifesaver. Doesn't the lifesaver naturally sit somebody or sit something on here? So again, form equals function. The function of your red blood cell is to carry things, particularly oxygen and carbon dioxide. There's something called hemoglobin, which is in the middle of this, which helps with that. Has 4 little seats right here in the center where there should be a nucleus. And that's really important, red blood cell. Now, how do I know this patient doesn't have an infection? Not too many white blood cells. White blood cells are our shiny white knights to fight infection. If we see a whole bunch of these purple things, then we know my patient has an infection. And what you can't really see is there's these little dots, and those are platelets. And platelets, they help with hemostasis, meaning they do blood clots, because let's say this is a blood vessel and there's a little hole here. The red blood cells will start going out of that hole if there's damage there. So what do the platelets do? They get nice and sticky, and then they gum up that wall, and then things can't go out. And that's happening throughout your body all day, every day. So can I easily take this picture and ask, hey, what's this? What's this function? Hey, what's this? What's that function? I mean, I really wouldn't do that for you regarding platelets, but you guys already know what a platelet does. It's clotting. What does the red blood cell or the erythrocyte do? Oh, it carries oxygen and carbon dioxide because it looks like a little lifesaver. Looks like a little Cheerio. And that's what I think about when I look at this. Looks like Cheerios to me. And then the purple things are white blood cells. They fight infection. And again, all of this is all, of course, on this video and in my notes. Let us do a couple more.
Look up images for blood histology and you'll be able to find what platelets look like. Next slide. This is dense, regular connective tissue. And the major feature that I'm looking at to see that it's dense, regular connective tissue is that it has kind of a wood grain appearance. You got these kind of lines going left and right. They're all going in the same direction. There's lots of collagen here, lots of submicroscopic collagen fibers, and those fibers are all running in one direction, and that's what gives it this kind of wood grain appearance.
Now, take what you know. If it looks like wood, wood's hard. So connective tissue, right? Like ligaments and tendons, they're hard. And you see how tightly packed they are? There's layer after layer after layer, and they're all glued together. And what glues it all together? Collagen, which, by the way, is great for your hair, but well, let's not talk about that. That's a part of the other lecture. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But you can see here, again, the form dictates the function. If it was loose connective tissue, there'd be spaces all over the place. But this is dense connective tissue. So there's not too many spaces. You can see all the lines are all on top of each other,
where everything's running in one direction. We also see nuclei to fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are the cells that live in connective tissues, and those fibroblast nuclei that I'm pointing to now are kind of flattened, and they're running in the same direction as all of those collagen fibers, contributing to that kind of wood grain appearance. So that again is dense, regular connective tissue. Where we would find this in the body, by the way, are in tendons and ligaments. Moving on to the next slide, this happens to be from skin. And what I'm wanting my students to be able to recognize here is that this area, this kind of more pinkish, I guess, maybe pinkish orange color here, and the appearance of it, you've got collagen fibers, again, like we had in the last slide, but now the collagen fibers are not running in just one direction, they're running in multiple directions. So this is dense, irregular connective tissue.
So you saw the other one, and it's also from a different view. This is like, like if you look at spaghetti sideways, it'll run left to right. But if you look at spaghetti from the top, it'll look like this, like a whole bunch of, but you can see how all the things in spaghetti aren't running. Some are big, some are small, some are going this way, some are bending a little bit that way. But again, you could see how there's not much space in between everything, and it gives everything its strength. So with that being said, let's stop this, because you can watch the rest of the video and with my notes at your leisure, right? Chain of infection. Let's see, what else do we need to go over so that you guys can start doing stuff? We went over discussions, we went over a lesson. Oh, that's the other thing I got to go over, and then we'll call it a night so that you can get onto this work. There's something called a concept map. Okay, now you can check on this lucid chart and whatnot. You could also Google, like, what's a concept map? Oh, here's one for lucid chart, but you can also do it using your Microsoft Word, and I can show you that in a minute. But let's see this. It's a really simple concept.
How to create a concept map. What is a concept map? A concept map is a visual way to organize thoughts and make connections between ideas. How can I use a concept map? You can use a concept map to brainstorm and organize ideas, create an outline for an assignment, or test your knowledge in review for exams. How do I make a concept map? By following these 7 steps. Step 1. Start by identifying the main topic and brainstorm everything you know about it. Use all relevant content from lectures, texts, and other course material. Step 2. Organize your information into main points. Step 3. Start creating your map. Begin with your main topic, then branch out to major points and supporting details. Step 4. Review your map and look for more connections. Use arrows, symbols, and colors to show relationships between ideas. Step 5. Include details. Definitions, equations, and diagrams are all useful. Step 6. Analyze and improve your map. Ask yourself, how do these ideas fit together? Have you made all necessary connections? Is the map accurate, logical, and detailed? Step 7. As you learn more, update your concept map to reflect your better understanding. Try talking out loud about your concept map. Ask yourself, can I describe the connections between these ideas? Following these 7 simple steps will allow you to create a concept map to help you study. For more information, get in touch.
Okay. So let's do, we're not asked to do a concept map for that's due next week, but I wanted to get a jump ahead to start of it because on your task 2 that's due in week 3, and that's a common theme. Like if task 1, discussion 1, lesson 1 is due when? Before week 2, before next Tuesday, all right? Which is, you know, I don't know, 5:59 by next Tuesday. So let's do a little bit of a concept map for this class. So if you look at here, insert, and it has shapes and whatnot. Now, what I also do is when I want to submit something, put your name when you save it and what assignment. So for example, I'm making up, let's call it task 2 concept map. This is MED110. And of course, I'm going to put my name. And I always put a date. So I know when I submitted something. And that's in the header. You double click on the space like above that line, close out your header. Those of you who are, and that header will be on every page that you use so that it'll be identifiable as you. Now, you can sit, I've had students do this. They go and they Google a concept map. And then do this BS. They take this, copy it, and then paste it and go, there's my map. Please don't do that. It's a good way to get in a lot of hot water. That's plagiarism. Your function is to create your own concept map with your own connections. And also I can show you how it can help you design questions and kind of preempt your professor on what's important. So you insert shapes, put a shape here. And I like to insert it like somewhere in the middle of the page, somewhere like that. And then I click in the middle and remember we talked about 2 things, right? And then I could copy it, paste it. And then you see how I'm just pasting like and then insert shapes again, and you can insert arrows. See how nice and neat that would be? And you give examples of anatomy, examples of physiology. You could also talk about also microscopy, and you'll see that it shows you connections and it shows you topics. And the branch off topics, guess what? Like for example, Let me make an example. Call this microscopy. Because that was part of the anatomy, yes. Then I'm going to draw another arrow. I mean, insert shape, another arrow. And the microscopy, remember, I could have an arrow here, parts of the microscope, another arrow here, histology video. And then, since I'm running out of space, I could put a big circle here, histology video, and then all the arrows of all the examples. And then every example will have an anatomy question and a physiology question. Don't you think that's exactly how I created my exam? Pretty much. And you could see that there's connections to everything. And you could also, let's draw a line. And there's also, of course, connection, because this is the class between anatomy and physiology. And then you just draw out the map, and you just keep on adding and keep on pointing out the definitions and expand from there. Take it to at least 2 or 3 levels out. Right? Microscopy. Okay, microscope. Types of microscopes. You learned at least 2 today. Light microscope and electron microscope. Then put in your other stuff. Then you could have another arrow here onto a bigger arrow of what do you call that? Of that video that has a lot of pictures, that has a lot of anatomy and a lot of physiology. Does anyone have any questions on how to do this? If so, you could hang on and we could expand on it after the class, or we can have one-on-one session. There's a whole bunch of options. So that is all the things that you need to do in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to now stop the